everyone. For those who weren't here in the morning on my first panel, my name is Rana, and I'm a senior digital editor at Forbes in Asia. I mainly work with millennials and young entrepreneurs. I was the editor of the first Forbes 30 under 30 list in Asia. For those of you who are not familiar with franchise, Forbes started 6 years ago a franchise called the Under 30, where we pick successful and disruptive and game changers basically from every industry. And we pick 30 in each industry, and they have to be under 30. So in total in Asia, this year was the first time we do it in Asia, and then we did one in Europe. So we're globalizing the franchise. We had 300 people in total. And just to give you an idea about those of you who think Forbes is only about old and quite rich people, it's also about millennials and young entrepreneurs. I'll ask to play a video from our Under 30 Summit, which happened this May in Singapore. So with me today, the panelists are two of our under 30 honorees from Asia. First I have Htet Myet, who is the co-founder, managing director of RANGOON Tea House in Myanmar. And then I have Rifeng, who is the co-founder and managing director of Grain in Singapore. Thanks, guys, for coming, and it's good to see you again. I think, firstly, if you can introduce yourself and what you do in around 30 seconds.
Hi, everyone. My name is Htet. So I run a restaurant group out of Myanmar. And for those of you who aren't too familiar with Myanmar, Myanmar is now the fastest growing economy in the world. And Forbes called it the last frontier as well. And about 2 years ago, we opened a standalone restaurant, which was Myanmar's first ever modern Burmese restaurant. And 2 years later, we've now become a fully, a brand new restaurant group that is fully focused on modern Burmese cuisine.
Rifeng.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Rifeng. So we run a company called Grain. So we are a full stack food delivery company. So what this means is that we do every part of the process in delivery, from the cooking, the delivery, and the ordering process as well. So how we compare against the similar players in the field like Uber Eats or Deliveroo is that we actually own the entire process from end to end, including the cooking process all the way down to the delivery process. And the idea that we are trying to build is that we're trying to build a biggest restaurant without a storefront. The focus over here is really on this, the idea of a restaurant without a storefront, where we maintain our own brand, our own control of the quality and experience.
So guys, you seem still a bit tense. I just want to say, after living 5 years in Asia, it always amazes me how people here are in love with their food. Like, everybody loves food, but there's something about people and their food in this part of the world that's, blows my mind. So what is your favorite food, and has it inspired you in any way?
For me, I think it's tough. It's a tough question for anyone, I think. So I grew up in the UK, And I only went back to Burma on holidays when I was a kid. So like anyone growing up and going on family holidays, it's always your favorite time. So for me, Burmese food was always my favorite. Now that I live there, I wouldn't say that is the case anymore. Probably I miss pub food in the UK or going, sausages and I miss bacon.
So your next venture is a pub then, in Yangon. Okay. And Rifeng?
So my favorite food is actually sushi. So we actually have this very small secret sushi joint that we all go to celebrate any small or big wins. And the reason why sushi is really like something that I really love is, besides that it's healthy, and the other part is actually the reason why when the care and the thought that a sushi chef puts into a piece of sushi, it can be immediately felt. So for example, the same piece of meat, the same rice between two sushi chefs, one chef can actually showcase the amount of care and thought that goes into each piece of meat.
You both operate in an industry that is increasingly becoming trend based and trend focused. How did that affect your business strategy, and how did your business and your ideas of the business change since 2 years and 2.5 years since you started?
Well, in Myanmar, trends are very difficult to control. So if you're a big brand coming in, you could spend millions of dollars on marketing campaigns, try to hype up what it is that you're doing, but it doesn't always work that way. And it's very difficult because the consumer is always changing. Facebook is so out of control in Myanmar. I don't think anyone has any idea what the power that it has. But you have to be very careful too. There's been lots of businesses that open within 6 months, they go out. And part of the reason of that is the trend is too strong. It goes up like a roller coaster and it goes straight back down. So part of what I do, or what we try to do, is we run, I think some people would call it trendy, or some people would call it hip. We obviously those words are very flattering, but I think you have to try and stray away from that, and you have to try and go into a part of the trend that will always be there in the background for the next 10, 15 years, not just the next 10, 15 minutes.
Okay.
So for us, we started 2.5 years ago, so that was a period of time whereby there's a rise in the trend of more conscious eating, and that's actually where Green started, which is focusing a lot more on wholesome food, great food, honest food. And for a period of time, we actually started gearing towards being perceived more towards a healthy food delivery company, and that's what made us where we are today. But to be honest, that's the first trend that we saw, and right now what we are feeling is that the trend is towards on-demand, great food on demand, and that's where we are running a next wave of trend to having amazing food delivered to you fast. So that's how, as trend changes, the company itself, we actually adapt to different changes in trend, and then we ride on them.
And in terms of competition, where do you and your businesses stand? For example, you operate in very different markets. In Htet's case, it's a market where now every big franchise is running to. So it's the first McDonald's, it's the first KFC. While in Singapore, I think people are quite sick of all the mass big brands, and they're trying to see some smaller and more wholesome brands. So who do you think is your main competitor, and how do you win over the competition?
Well, I think in Myanmar, the first thing that you need to understand is there are 3 types of F&Bs when you go into the market. So one, you've got the greenfield restaurants like what I do, which RANGOON tea houses, which is in 10 years, 20 years, it will still be there. Secondly, you have a new brand that we have coming out in the next 2 weeks, Mr. Wok, which is filling in a need in the market, but which isn't necessarily a new concept. It's just something that has always been there, but you're improving the service. And then the third one is to go in to the legacy concepts. So, a very, very simple rice and curry shop, but you improve it by improving the ingredients or improving different things. I think a 4th sector is now coming in, which is the chains. We got our first Burger King last month, $8 for an angry Whopper, which made a lot of people very upset. And you have Pizza Hut now, KFC, which has went up to 6 branches within 8 months. So, competition is coming thick and fast. I think you have to be able to hold strong and have a sustainable business. I think one of the things about Asia is that restaurants are very much, to owners, it's a romantic project. It's too much about, taking your friends there and less about how you run it as a business. And that's the problem that we have in Myanmar too. A lot of people who are opening restaurants, bringing in franchises because they have the money, not because they necessarily want money. And so that's a very big problem that we have.
Okay.
So I think the biggest competition is a bit difficult for us in the sense that there's actually two main groups of competitors we look at. The first is the most straightforward group of them, which is Uber Eats or Deliveroo. They came in 6 months ago. But what we feel is that for us, when we go the full stack approach, where we control the entire process from the ordering, the cooking, and the delivery, we can actually ensure a very, very tight customer experience. So for example, if the food is if it's delivered off any restaurants, the food may not be designed for delivery. So things may get soggy, it gets slushy, doesn't hold well during delivery. But whereas when we do the full stack approach, every single part of the process actually thought out for delivery first. It is designed for delivery. And that's what we actually focus a lot of effort on. The second biggest group of competitors we feel is actually not the big names, but just a restaurant wherever you are. So how do we actually convince you from our customers from choosing grain over the small salad shop that's below your building? So that part comes really a lot from the brand itself. So how we have a strong focus on building a brand up, being a brand for quality, a brand for thoughtfulness and care, and those are stuff that we actually focus on to differentiate ourselves.
Okay. Now I go to prices. Good food comes with a price, and Htet, in your case, it's a new market where people, still not earning maybe as much to afford to go to the restaurant every day. And as I know from your restaurant, you actually source quality ingredients, and thus the price goes a little up than what people are used to there. So how do you? What's the reaction of your consumers, and is there a difference between a consumer, like a younger customer who is willing to pay for quality, or maybe the older ones who probably are used to things costing a certain way, and it's more difficult to kind of educate them in that sense?
To answer your first question, the initial reaction was terrible. So what we do at Rangoon Tea House is we do modern Burmese food, but I mean, that's a bit of a loose term. We take street food in Myanmar and we put better recipes, we put better ingredients into it, and we put it in a beautiful setting. So yes, it will cost more than it does on the street. Now the problem that we have is that we have customers, the restaurant is full every day, but in Myanmar, the social media side is so strong that everyone has access to what you do. So if you were in London or New York or Hong Kong and you opened a restaurant, the problem is that how do you get people to know about what you do? Whereas in Myanmar, you have the other problem. Everyone knows about what you do. So if I sell something for $5 that would normally cost 50 cents in a rural area, normally it wouldn't even matter. But for me, you have people who, we had people threatening to burn down the restaurant. Seriously, it was a big problem for us. But we stuck by what we thought, which was we wanted to make Burmese food into something that you could see in New York and London and all these great metropolises around the world, and I think we're on the way there. And yes, we use better ingredients, but you have to consider the other side, which is if when I was about 5-6 years old and you'd go to Myanmar, a bowl of noodles on the street cost 50 cents. You go back 10-15 years later, ingredients have gone up 10 times, you've got inflation, but the bowl of noodles still costs the same, right? So you've got a problem. Is the problem that they're cutting corners by using horrible ingredients? But a lot of the problem is that these people who were living moderately good lives are now impoverished because they don't feel that customers will pay that price, so they don't feel brave enough to raise the prices. And because they don't know how to cost things properly and no one has went in to tell them that this is what you should do. They've ended up suffering quite a lot. So we have a problem in Myanmar right now. You know, it's quite interesting because if I opened my restaurant in London where I used to live, it would be in maybe the bracket of casual dining, where you'd maybe pay £20, £25 a head. But in Myanmar, I cost the same as KFC, but people think I'm expensive, right? So it's a very interesting
You're
way.
local.
Yeah.
People are used to probably international brands as worth paying for in
right.
some mentality. Rifeng, when you started Grain, it was mainly delivering to certain pickup points, and it was one certain kind of food, which was more like a health-conscious food. And within 2.5 years, you did change your business model. So how do you operate now, and what prompted you to do this change?
So when we first started, it was quite a small business. There's a bunch of us, 4 of us. We put our own money, and then we created a delivery company. But one thing about delivery companies is that it's extremely expensive to run a logistics company where we do our own deliveries. So all the costs associated with the rentals, the manpower costs are huge for us. So to find a very ingenious way for us to actually lower, to be more efficient with the cost, and also not overcharge our customers. So one way that we actually figure out is actually we do a curbside pickup. So for example, we targeted the CBD area, the Raffles Place area. So if you're working there, in order from Grain, we give you free deliveries, but you actually collect downstairs at your lobby. So in this way, we are able to say collate maybe 10 orders at one shot and deliver to you in the cheapest possible manner. But that's where we first started. And as we grow and we scale, we got in more investors, we built our infrastructure and built our network. We are able to then say, offer better level of service at a similar price point. So what happened now is that we have a fleet of on-demand drivers, riders that's able to deliver to your door, much better service standards, and building up different mobile hubs, which is a truck that's fitted with warmers and chillers to actually lower the delivery costs across Singapore. So right now we're able to cover most of Singapore and have a very quick 30 minutes delivery to your doorstep.
So do you think by now, after only 2.5 years, you know your consumer, especially the young professionals that you cater for, more than big brands and franchises do? And if so, how is being young helped you to do that?
Yes, we do. I think the biggest part is that we listen. Being young is actually, we feel that right now we have a very young, a very lean team. The biggest part of us, this is a bunch of extremely high-powered, driven individuals that comes together, that's willing to do things differently. So one of the biggest things that enable us to actually listen to our customers is that at the end of every meal, we actually send out a feedback form to you electronically and ask for how well do you rate your food and how well do you rate the delivery service from 1 to 5, 1 to 5 for delivery as well. So this actually enables us to actually listen in and understand our consumer a lot better. So for example, we started off with a weekly changing menu, which changes. So we have 4 items on the menu that changes every week. We thought it was interesting, we thought it was cool, but when we heard from customers that there are actually certain items that they prefer to have it on all the time, and whenever you want it, you have it. So we listened, and then we start changing our menu setup such that we have fixed items that's on the menu, and we have a bit of rotation every week that make things interesting. So the part about this part is that where we pay a lot of attention to listening to our customers is what we feel is a huge advantage over the bigger brands and the bigger franchises.
Okay. Htet, I'll come back to you. You mentioned Facebook, and I've heard in Myanmar, basically internet equals Facebook. If everyone is on Facebook, and you have how many fans on your page as well?
I think our single standalone probably has about 55,000. If we added it all together, it would probably be over 100.
And that's, was there any marketing budget?
There was no marketing budget, but it's very normal in Myanmar right now that any restaurant, even if they've been open 2 weeks, they'll have 30, 40,000 people already following exactly what they do.
So how do you do your marketing? What's the marketing strategies you follow to reach your audience?
The thing about Myanmar right now is there's no one who's been ahead of you who's already done it. So if I was to open an Italian restaurant in Singapore, there's been hundreds here before. I can exactly copy and paste and maybe tweak here and there. Whereas in Myanmar, no one has done this before, so we're just, I guess, with a lack of a better word, we're just winging it. And we made a lot of mistakes at the beginning, particularly to do with being bilingual. And we went in there, even just the first month, we were just posting in English because the majority of our customers, I would say 99% of our customers are either well-educated Burmese or they're expats living in the city. And we went in with that, but actually the criticism that we got in not making it bilingual were people who weren't coming to the restaurant. But at the same time, it still has a negative effect on how your business is seen. So we had to change it up.
So it's like pros and cons, basically,
That's
about
right.
being there. One last question for you guys. You are called the disruptors. Do you think your business is disrupting the industry? And if so, how?
I think we have disrupted the industry. We've disrupted it less with, we do very well as a business, but we haven't come in there and we're not making $20–30 million a year, but we've disrupted completely the way locals see Burmese food. Because anytime a new local restaurant opens up, it's like, oh, is it like RANGOON Tea House? Is it as expensive as RANGOON Tea House? But with that also comes people who will staunchly defend what we do. So it's actually ended up being very positive. And people, for every one person that says it's expensive, there'll be two that says it's not.
So you set the bench. You're
That's
one of
right.
the early comers. What about you, Rifeng?
So we didn't really go in with the mindset of disrupting the industry. I think it's one of the very sexy thing to say that disrupting industry is great, because what happened is that you start creating products that it's sexy but may not actually solve a problem. So what we did is that we actually start looking at the problems that we want to fix. We identify them bit by bit and solve them very fundamentally. So in this case, how do we get tasty food consistently? So we focus on processes to make sure that we deliver food, to cook the food in a very, very consistent manner. The other part is how do we get food to you fast and warm? So that's something that's a huge problem that we have to solve fundamentally. And the way that we do it is that we think of the delivery medium. How do we actually ensure that we keep our food warm by having a truck that has a warmer and chiller that's powered by a generator on board? So using different technology and processes to solve all these problems with a lot of care. And then in combination, this allows us to actually then therefore create a much, much more superior product. And with this product, whether it disrupts industry or not, that's something that we leave it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. All the best of luck. Please give them a round of applause. And I don't think we have time for a Q&A, but if anyone has any question, you can catch them outside. Thank you very much.